Discipline. Our human capital policy is based on our organizational values and is oriented to the pursuit of the best contractual terms for the associates in order to guarantee their satisfaction and the competitiveness of the organization. This policy ensures the application of the best practices to personally motivate each of the members of the store, optimizes technical training and reinforces behaviors and efforts that support organizational and business priorities. It also fosters an environment of equality, free from discrimination and harassment. The objective of this norm is to ensure the recruitment, retention and motivation of talent and comply with the provisions of the clauses of the Venture Partners Agreement. It applies to all partners of the franchises established in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Definitions. Discipline. A set of rules governing a business or organization. Major faults. Severe verbal abuse, physical aggression, screaming and anything that seriously impairs the physical or moral integrity of the person. Misdemeanors. Misunderstandings, mild discussions. Responsibility. Franchise board. Store manager. The store manager shall consult at all times with the franchise board before applying a disciplinary measure to the associate. If not, the measure will be considered void and may be cause for reprimand for the store manager as a result for making decisions without consulting with the franchise board. Disciplinary measures must be justified to the board prior to its application. The board should respond to the store manager or person in charge if the proposed disciplinary measure is approved or not. The disciplinary measures must be discussed with the associate or associates after closing time. Also, the associate's payment cut will be done in advance and signed by the associate. Funds resulting from disciplinary measures shall be deposited in a bank account established by Salvador Cooperative and will eventually be destined to social assistance or cooperation initiatives. The collection of disciplinary measures will be done through a voucher to the participation of the associate, and it must be signed by the associate. In the event that an associate refuses to serve a customer, if this is due to the fact that the aforementioned associate is waiting for another client, or that the associate simply does not want to provide service to the particular customer, the store manager or the person in charge will remind the associate of his or her duties regarding customer service. If the situation repeats, the store manager, in accordance with the guidelines, must issue a disciplinary measure to the associate of an equivalent of 40% of a billing day at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. If after the first disciplinary measure the associate maintains the same attitude, he or she will be disciplined with the equivalent of 40% of 3 days of billing at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. If an associate fails to comply with the customer service hours schedule, the associate who did not comply with the starting or closing hours for more than 1 day a week will be disciplined with the equivalent of 40% of a billing day at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. If the situation repeats, in accordance with the guidelines, a disciplinary measure will be applied to the associate of an equivalent of 40% of a billing day at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. The manager must make the associate aware that if this conduct is repeated yet again, the company will end the contract. If the associate is absent for 1 day or more without justifiable cause and/or without notice, the store manager or the person in charge will apply a disciplinary measure as follows. If the absence is of 1 day, the associate will be disciplined with a deduction of 40% of a billing day or a full weekend at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. If the absence is of 2 or more days, the member will be disciplined with a deduction of 40% of 3 billing days, at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. Repeating the same situation will cause a disciplinary measure consisting of a deduction of 40% of weekly sales, at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. In the event that an associate disrespects another member of the organization or a third party on the premises, the business manager or the person in charge of discipline will determine the appropriate disciplinary action, considering the following ranges of fault. In case of a misdemeanor, the associate should be warned. The manager or person in charge of discipline will explain to the associate the importance of following the rules of the organization. On top of that, the associate will be disciplined with the equivalent of 40% of 2 billing days, at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. In case of a serious offense, it shall terminate the contract between both parties. In the event that an associate expresses malicious or harmful comments within the company premises or to persons who represent it, or encourages other employees to express such comments, the store manager must validate the facts and, if true, will proceed to warn the associate. And in case of serious misconduct, the member should be disciplined with the equivalent of the amount billed for 3 days, based on what that associate had billed the same day the previous week. The repetition of the situation will be disciplined with 40% of the billing of a week, based on what that associate had billed the previous week. In the event that an associate expresses, in front of the customer, negative comments regarding the work of his or her peers, the manager or person in charge of discipline will explain to the associate, separately, the importance of following the rules of the organization. On top of that, the associate will be disciplined with the equivalent of 40% of a billing day, at the discretion of the store manager, considering what was billed by the associate on the same day the previous week. The repetition of the situation will be disciplined with the equivalent of the amount billed for a week, based on what that associate had billed the previous week. In the event that an associate performs a service without previous authorization, the manager or person in charge will ask for an explanation and will inform the associate that the disciplinary measure will be the equivalent to the price of the service. The same procedure applies for those associates that performed a service without previously being authorized by the manager. If the situation happens again, the associate will be disciplined with the equivalent of 40% of 3 days of billing, based on what that associate billed on those same days the previous week. If the associate does not use the proper communication channels or violates the confidentiality of the company, if it were a misdemeanor, the business manager will remind the associate the importance of following the appropriate communication channels and respect the confidentiality of the company. If it were a serious violation of the confidentiality of the company, this will immediately terminate the contract signed by both parties, and the company will reserve the right to initiate criminal proceedings. If it were a continuous violation of the communication channels, the associate will be disciplined with the equivalent of 40% of 3 days of billing, based on what that associate billed on those same days the previous week. In the event that an associate personally collects payment for services or makes fraudulent actions against the company, the business manager, after verifying the action, proceeds immediately to terminate the contract signed by both parties. In the event that an associate refuses to cooperate with the grooming of their peers, the business manager must emphatically remind the associate that cooperating with the grooming of their peers is an integral part of the policy regarding personal appearance. If the associate persists with this attitude, he or she will be disciplined with 40% of a billing day to be determined by the company, based on what that same associate billed on that same day the previous week. In the event that an associate applies to a customer a product not authorized by the franchise without completing the authorization form, the store manager will proceed to the termination of the associate's contract due to breach of the guidelines of the company, given that this action violates the commitments established by the company to third parties. In the event that an associate uses or applies to another associate a product that is neither authorized nor supplied by the franchise, under no circumstances can an associate use a product different than those. If such situation happened, the store manager will immediately proceed to the termination of the associate's contract, for this action violates the commitments established by the company to third parties. In the event that an associate makes a service appointment with a customer and fails to attend it, and does not inform the manager or assistant manager about his or her absence, the store manager must notify the associate that appointments are not used in the company's customer service system. If the situation repeats, the manager must discipline the associate with the equivalent of 40% of 2 billing days, based on what the associate had billed in the previous week. In the event that an associate does not take good care of the equipment assigned to him or her, in case of proven negligence or willful misconduct of the associate, he or she must bear the cost of repairing or replacing the equipment. Any decision to let an associate go or terminate his or her contract must be previously authorized by the store manager or franchise general manager, and the reasons for it must be clearly explained. If an associate quits, or if his or her contract is terminated due to the application of disciplinary measures, the store manager or person in charge must communicate this to the store manager or general manager before allowing the associate to take away his or her utensils or materials. In the event that an associate offers performing services at customers' homes, if there is evidence that the partner offered to provide services at customers' homes, the associate will be disciplined with 40% of the billing of the week, based on what that same associate billed on the previous week. If the situation repeats, the store manager will consider terminating the contract with the associate. In the event that an associate refuses to participate in the monthly team building meetings without proper justification, the business manager or the person in charge of discipline will determine the appropriate disciplinary action considering the following ranges of fault. If the absence is justifiable, the manager should still warn the associate, individually and separately, and remind him or her of the importance of attending these meetings. If the associate missed the meeting intentionally, he or she will be disciplined by the store manager or person in charge with 40% of the 2 highest billing days of his or her highest billing week. Exception: it is at the management's discretion, in cases of breach of rules, to change the disciplinary measure of termination for a suspension, based on the specific situation. If so, the associate still will be disciplined with 40% of what he or she billed on the previous day and/or a reduction of the percentage for a period to be determined by the store manager or the corporate office, where its intervention deemed necessary. The period established will be supervised.